Welcome to the Local Business Show. Seth Greene is a nationally recognized marketer who is the nation's foremost authority on growing local businesses through direct response marketing podcasts, and the only person to be nominated 3 times for the GKIC Dan Kennedy Marketer of the Year Award. Seth will be joined by a capable cohort of co-hosts who are each local business marketing experts in their own right. On the podcast, Seth and his co-hosts brings together small business owners and other local business authorities to share with you their inspiring stories of how they started their local business, how they serve their local business clients, how they grow their local business, and how you can too. And now, here's your host, Seth Greene.
This is Seth Greene. Today I have the good fortune to be interviewing Jacobie Whitley, attorney at law from the law offices of Jacobie K. Whitley. Jacobie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Seth. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Let's go back in time a little bit. I find people in the helping professions often get into them for a reason. What made you want to become a lawyer?
Well, I always wanted to be a lawyer, actually. It started off this earliest childhood. My early childhood memories of a lawyer was sitting with my granddad watching TV and watching Matlock and Perry Mason. So, and also I was bullied as a kid. So like I had those guys as kind of like my heroes, but
Yep.
I was bullied and then I connected the two and was like, I could fight back. I could be a lawyer. So that's how it was. The idea was born, and thankfully I was able to make it happen.
Well, I was bullied as a child as well, so I can totally relate to that and how that changes you, how it inspires you, how it makes you tougher. Tell us, you practice in some interesting areas of law. What are you specializing in now, and how did you arrive at that part of your practice?
Great. That's actually a great question. So that's a great question because if people don't know, if you have a small or a solo firm, the legal market fluctuates, and you have to adapt to that. And right now, we're in clearly one of those times of flux. Really, I have a strong criminal background, but as of late, the firm has adjusted to, we're doing a lot of estate planning right now. We're doing a lot of real estate transactions and real estate work. Immigration is huge. So we're making a lot of inroads with immigration, especially with the change in administration. And so those are the big areas right now, outside the general civil litigation and things like that.
Okay, let's go through them, do a deeper dive on some of those. Talk a little bit about how the change in the administration has changed immigration law.
Okay, so for one thing that most people in immigration will know about is that previous administration implemented a public charge initiative. And that is where basically non-citizens had to prove would be able to financially sustain themselves without depending on any government assistance. That caused a lot of angst in the immigration community and delayed a lot of applications and caused a lot of issues. So the current administration has removed that, along with other changes that have opened up the immigration portals more so than the previous administration. A lot of people now have more access to immigration resources now than previously.
Okay, so if I'm a layperson, forgive me. So if I understand that correctly, and I'm not making any political judgments, it used to be that you had to prove, at least under the previous, we'll say Trump administration, you had to prove financial wherewithal to enter this country because they didn't want people who were going to be needing public assistance. And the Biden administration has changed that and now said, no, anybody can come in. It doesn't matter if you need help. We're the land of the free and we want you here anyway. Did I get that right?
Right. Well, you still have to meet certain criteria, right? But there's not as much as a stringent barrier, financial barrier. So that's what I'm pretty much saying. And that's how the public charge doctrine was interpreted. Of course, you do have to, in either administration, document some of your financial history. But the public charge, a lot of people in the immigration community felt like that was weaponized against immigrants. So that weaponized document has been removed. And yes, that has opened up the immigration market to more people, absolutely.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people making when they're trying to immigrate to this country?
Really taking the process for granted. Now, some of my immigration clients, some of them are my best clients. They're super knowledgeable. But people make the mistake, because I've done my own research, I think I could just do this myself. And there are some basic visas, not a problem. However, some more complex visas, when it becomes involved with the work issue, multiple parties or multiple companies involved, those things can get complex. And the common mistake I see is people trying to do it themselves.
Okay. And then obviously you're helping them not make that mistake. All right. That talks about immigration law. You also mentioned uptick in estate planning. Let's talk a little bit about that. What does estate planning mean to you? When someone says, what's estate planning? How do you answer that?
Great question. So estate planning happens while you're alive. And while you are alive, what you decide is you come up with a plan on how you will divide your estate. And that's how we get to the term. And so to break that down even further is we accumulate property throughout our lives. And while we're still alive, estate planning allows to make plans for that property after we perish. So a lot of friction, family friction, business friction, a lot of issues can arise after your death. And that can cause a lot of problems for the people that you leave behind. And estate planning is a way of trying to circumvent or mitigate those issues after you perish.
Okay, so failure to plan is obviously a huge issue. Why do you think people don't do this?
Lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, and fear because of lack of understanding and information. People just don't understand the ramifications or the benefits of having a will and how it makes the property much easier to deal with after, and also the tax consequences. People don't know that there's a lot of tax penalties by going through probate and by moving some property with an estate plan, arranging for that property not to go through the probate process, which is the legal process that your property has to go through once you do perish, that a lot of those tax consequences can be saved or prevented.
So estate planning, historically, I think there have been some misconceptions around it. I think people thought it was only for the rich and you had to have millions and millions of dollars. So talk a little bit about how normal people need estate planning.
Absolutely. Here's the thing, rich, poor, in between, we all have, right? You have property. Now, without a will, your property will pass through intestate succession. So your familial line, right? It will go through your family. Maybe you have property that you would rather give to a friend and you would rather not that property go through the familiar succession. So in able to give property to people outside your family network, that is something estate planning will allow a person to do. So rich, poor, in the middle, we all have property that we would like to give someone after our time here. And estate planning allows to basically carry out that intent, whatever it is, whatever the income is, whatever the income level, whatever your intent is, estate planning allows you to carry out that intent after you perish.
Awesome. And then do you delve into at all their issues around people who have lack of capacity like Alzheimer's or dementia, or do you deal with people who are getting ready who think, hey, in the next 3 to 5 years or longer, I might end up needing some type of skilled care? Do you deal with that at all?
Absolutely. And so that's essentially the purpose of power of attorney. So a power of attorney basically grants the power to someone, if you become incompetent, to make decisions for you. And there's a medical power of attorney for medical decisions, and there's a power of attorney which is generally for financial decisions. That is why, though, estate planning is on the uptick. COVID, whether it's mental incompetence or physical incompetence or just death, has caused people to think about this and these concerns more. Or people have unfortunately had a death in the family and they're currently going through the probate process. And this is just happening at a much higher rate because of, one, the baby boomers, and two, COVID.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you also mentioned the uptick in surge in demand in real estate law. Talk a little bit about how that's changed.
Perfect. In an estate planning situation, someone just inherited a home. They may have a home, so they seek advice on how to rent a home, what licensing they need to rent a home, or they would rather just sell it. So they need help on selling it, or they inherited a property and they're trying to sell it and there's an issue with the title. buyer's title company has discovered in their title search there's a quirky break or something, some type of defect in a chain of title. And that's basically the succession of deeds for the property. And sometimes an attorney needs to come in to fix that situation. And sometimes the court needs to get involved, so that attorney petitions the court to help rectify that situation. So those are some of the real estate situations, and they stem from estate planning and probate situations that a lot of people are finding themselves in. Again, because of the passing of property, people are finding themselves buying, selling, and randomly owning new property.
You focus on a number of different areas of law. What do you like best about what you're doing?
I'm a people person. So I like solving problems and I like meeting new people. So this totally lets me do both.
Absolutely. I know you're in different areas of law. Who's an ideal client for you?
Ideal client is someone who just knows their case or passionate about their case. There isn't an ideal client for me in a certain area, but the more knowledgeable that client is about their legal issue, the more that they're resourced. And I love clients that are resources because it just makes litigation or just working the case that much easier and that much stronger, just because we have better resources.
Absolutely. What are some of the challenges you've overcome along the way? You mentioned childhood. What about in your legal career? What have been some of the interesting situations that have come up?
For me, the whole ride, getting through law school, passing the bar. I'm a first generation attorney. So I didn't have anyone in my family that I could immediately reach out to and say, hey, run into the situation. What do I do? I kind of had to figure things out, bump my head, get back up, and just kind of figure things out. So as I grow in my practice, I definitely would like to be a mentor and resource to people going forward. But for me, the entire process, because I was a first generation attorney, without getting into all kinds of horror stories, this whole process has been very interesting. And so something that I would advise to anybody that's thinking about becoming an attorney is planning. Plan your resources, stack your money away. It's very expensive. And what no one tells you is the whole process is designed for people with resources, right? A book in law school, $400, easy. One book, and you might need 2 or 3, depending on the supplements required for a class. So those are some of the expenses in law school. And then also the networking, that cost. There's a lot of hidden costs into going to law school and also practicing. If you want to start a solo, you also run the business. So there's a lot of fees, grants that you have to pay for and manage. It's a very taxing and very financially burdensome process. So make sure that you plan for that, because it's designed for people that have readily access to those resources. So if you find yourself not being one of those people, it's totally not impossible. But that's when you have to leverage your resourcefulness in other areas to get over those obstacles.
Now, you have, on the flip side, helped quite a few people over the years. So talk a little bit about kind of like your charitable endeavors. I know you've got a big heart and you give back a lot. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so great. We're actually we're trying to deal with COVID, but we're planning an old school kind of like give back guerrilla marketing tactic at the same time. So DC and just with COVID, a lot of people are enjoying outside parks. That's always been a thing. So we are working on coming up with a safe strategy to implement, basically going to local parks in the DC, Northern Virginia area, setting up a table with the legal team and just doing basically speed dating legal advice. There's free, cursory, sit down outside at a table with the lawyer, shoot me your question. I'll give you a little guidance, and we'll just go on throughout the day. If it's something that morphs into a retainer, great. But if I'm able to give you a little guidance, a little advice that can help you along on a pro se journey or just give you an idea, that's what we're open to. So that way we'll be able to connect more with the community to identify other ways that we can give back.
I love that. It's almost like a pro bono free workshop, ask me anything, live, outdoor.
Live.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. I love That's a brilliant idea. I hope it goes well. So I know that you talked about the $400 textbooks. On the flip side, what are some of the best books you've ever read that affected your career or you personally that anybody might be able to get their hands on as opposed to a law school textbook? Like, what are some of your favorite books?
The Alchemist.
Ooh, Alchemist is a great book.
It's the mindset. So that everything by Robert Greene, the
48 Law. Yep.
It's just the stories. I went to public school, right? So some of those stories and those analogies, those historical anecdotes that he provides, those are Ivy League stories.
Yes.
So that access to that. So I recommend Robert Greene. Politically, one of the books that had one of the most influences on me was Alex Haley's autobiography of Malcolm X. I have to mention, even if this isn't an author per se, Jay-Z, I wouldn't have started my own business if it wasn't for his entrepreneurial influence. And that has had a big influence on my life and people in the legal, because I always bring that up, or sometimes taken aback by that, but I always retort, who else do I know that I've watched make themselves a billionaire?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great recommendations. For our folks watching and listening who want to learn more about what you're doing, where is the best place for them to go?
Oh, our website, www.lawofficeofjkw.com. And our Instagram is Reddit_ESQ is our Instagram. So you can check us out there as well.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share that I didn't think to ask you?
Everyone follow your dreams. Never give up. That's it.
Awesome. Well, this has been Seth Greene here with Jacobie Whitley of Law Office of JKW.com. Jacobie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Seth. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching or listening, and we'll see you next time.